You know, I was reading a book about Iran, and while I was reading it, I was thinking of like it was talking about the Islamic Revolution and how the government structure's been since, and how like the socio-political climate is, and all of that. And there were a few, I'd say, comparable coordinates between what I saw happen then in Iran, or read happen then in Iran, and I see right now. And one of those things is this idea of West toxified. That's a term the Iranians use a lot. If somebody wears a tie, they're West toxified. If somebody is fond of Western pop culture, or so on and so forth, it's West toxification. And Iran is in a, like, I'm not trying to compare them one is to one, India and Iran, but it's in a unique place by itself. But it's it's similar. Like, what I've also seen is this rejection, this renunciation of what can be borrowed from the West. When you said, how Naipaul says we should not borrow Western concepts to understand the Indic landscape, the Indian
Words,
land,
Western words.
Western words, right? And that's a fair thing to say. But on the other hand, we have the idea that Mr. Modi, because he's only educated through the RSS, has a very limited worldview. And so, if there is a sort of a toxification that can seep from the West, or an import that might not be exactly accurate that can seep from the West, and then there is a limitation that comes from our education system, for that matter, even RSS education system being so limited, like, how do I imagine the perfect educational specimen? What does that constitute for India?
Um, we have to, for a start, very consciously uh, decolonize the education system, which, sadly, Nehru never did.
Hmm.
So, we produced, for people like me, little Black English girls, who were going to little English schools. And, we read. Do you know that I spoke only Punjabi till I went to school,
Hmm.
and I came out speaking only English. And I mean, I didn't even know. And I have a great fondness for Urdu poetry. The only poetry I really like to read is Urdu poetry. I'd never heard of Ghalib. No, I had heard of him, but I'd
Hmm.
never read any of this. It was all Shelley and Keats and Enid Blyton and all that kind of thing. Now,
Right.
what has happened is that kind of colonization of the public education system that the British set up has gone all the way down to the very bottom. So they had at the top, they wanted people who could become officials of the empire. Lower down, they just wanted serfs, right?
Hmm.
So if you go into a village school, you come out without being able to read a novel.
Hmm.
You might read Premchand as part of your your syllabus,
Hmm.
but that's it. You come out. I'll give you an example that Ajit, this man that I live with, he took Amish Tripathi to an engineering college, you know, and Amish is a big promoter of Indian heritage, and he said to them, he said, "How many of you have read mathematics?" And everyone put their hands up and thing. And he said, "How many of you know about Bhaskaracharya?"
Hmm.
And not one or one hand went
Hmm.
up.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Similarly with Mr. Modi, he opened a hospital uh, early in his first term. I think with the Ambanis, it was their hospital. And he talked about how there must have been plastic surgery in India because Ganesh was given an elephant.
Right.
Now, actually, there was plastic surgery in India. The first plastic surgeon in the world, or probably the first surgeon, was Sushruth.
Hmm.
But it didn't occur to him, having grown up in a totally Indian environment, that Sushruth is who he should have mentioned. Do you know that if you have a nose job now, to this day, they still use the method that Sushruth invented?
Hmm.
And in surgical colleges all over the world, you have a little bust of Sushruth. But how many Indian children know that we did actually invent plastic surgery? Now,
Hmm.
there were great achievements from, in India's past,
Hmm.
which we don't teach our children. So what are you teaching them? You're still not teaching them why they should love India, why they should respect our civilization, our culture, why Sanskrit is important. Atish, as he must have told you, discovered writing from learning Sanskrit.
Hmm.
I mean,
We never got around to that, but that sounds
oh,
wonderful.
He actually realized that there was this huge wealth of Sanskrit literature that he had never read, and so then he went out and learned Sanskrit, but he couldn't learn it here because here they just teach you how to, a few shloks and, to have conversation in Sanskrit. He had to go to Oxford or Columbia or somewhere. Columbia from Shelley, Pollock, right? So, I mean, what are these flaws in our education system that need to be rectified? Does he recognize them? Does he acknowledge them? It saddens me because I really was considered a bhakt. That the limitations with which his own education was contaminated, continue to prevent him from seeing the bigger canvas.
Right. Right.